IG Farben, Hoist, Bayer, all of those companies merged together to design pharmaceuticals and dangerous concoctions. And that's kind of where it started. Welch went over to train with them in the latter part of the 1800s when they were doing some of their best work. Ouch. Welch, now the director of Johns Hopkins, would be instrumental in cementing the Rockefeller government-controlled healthcare right along with the introduction into pharma. And so holistic medicines, natural remedies, they would start to get demonized in lieu of bringing pharma that would deliver, these remedies that gave side effects and other illnesses. We would become the perpetual patient. Pharma was salivating at this. And so the Flexner Report of 1910 came out. It did the damage to holistic medicine and natural remedies, and even marijuana, CBD. Abraham Flexner was told by John D. Rockefeller to run around the country and evaluate the effectiveness of all the therapies taught in medical schools and other institutions of the healing arts. And Rockefeller wanted to dominate over petroleum, petrochemicals, and pharmaceuticals, which were derived from coal tars or crude oil. And he arranged for his company, Standard Oil of New Jersey. Did the name Bush come to mind? Senor Prescott Bush. Anyway, Standard Oil, to obtain a controlling interest in this huge German drug cartel called IG Farben. And the total number of medical schools in the United States went from 160 on down to 69 schools. Why did it cut into about a third? Well, it was all about controlling the training of the doctors. Sometimes we need to kind of go over the big picture just a little bit to understand why we're here. Why are we asking Fauci if our kids can trick or treat if it's safe enough? Can you even imagine? Can you imagine the power that they've amassed? Sickening. And the more we see it, and the more people that see it, and the more eyeballs that wake up to what's going on, maybe they'll see it in a completely different way that they can't unsee. That usually happens with truth.
People ask me all the time, Alex, the last 3 months or so, you've had explosive energy on top of your already very intense level of energy. What's happening? Well, it's the things that are happening in the world right now. That's got my blood up. But also, I've gotten back in the groove of religiously taking 3 products every single day. DNA Force Plus, that's back in stock. Also, X2, Deep Earth Crystal Iodine, that's essential for your immune system, your whole body. And, of course, at nighttime, Down and Out Sleep Aid that makes me have deeper, cleaner, restful sleep that, again, boosts my immune system and is good for every cell in my body and great for the spirit. All 3 of these products are in stock right now. They are 40% off in the case of DNA Force Plus and 50% off for 1 week only on Survival Shield X2. And, yes, until supplies last, we have Down and Out, 50% off at InfoWarsStore.com. This is the trifecta. I suggest you check it out and experience what this does for your body today.
Hi there, I'm Kate Daly, your guest host today from The Kate Daly Show. Happy to be here and happy to address a really big picture issue today. I love doing the backstory to things, and that's what I'm going to do today. I want to address our perspective. Our perspective is hugely important to what's happening right now and how we view the world. And this could be a really, really powerful hour. Maybe we'll even hit some light bulb moments for you. Maybe you know everything I'm about to say, but nonetheless, we have a huge division in this country. I was thinking about this a while back, and I was thinking about our fears and how the vaccinated fear the unvaccinated, like we're, gonna kill them off at any moment, even though they're healthy, and how the unvaccinated are nervous about being around the vaccinated because I think they're a walking biological weapon. So you have a clear division in the country where a third of the country really does fear the vaccinated. And so how do we get to that point? There's 2 sets of fears. There's a set of fears on the left for the leftist and the set of fears on the right for conservatives. And the interesting issue here is that we both have a set of fears. The fears on the left would be, I fear germs are going to kill me at any moment. I fear the climate is going to come get me. Every decade, at the end of every decade, I'm either going to be a shish kebab or I'm going to be a frozen rotunda, and that everybody needs to be controlled by government or we'll be wild animals, right? This is the belief system. On the conservative side, or they'll mock it and say it's a conspiracy theory side, it's more or less, hey, the deep state will take our liberty. And there is a new world order. And they have some well-laid plans, and they might crash the economy to build their wealth and power. Well, if you look back in history, centuries of generations, history is only going to prove one set of those fears to be true. Can you guess which one? So what keeps us divided? What keeps us on this track? And you know what? The one question we're horrible at asking, and after being on the radio for 10 years, I can tell you this with straight up conviction, is the fact that we never ask what caused that. What caused World War II? What caused Great Depression? What caused the CDC to have more power than the doctors? What caused polio to spike in the first place? Nobody asks this. And the backstory is really, really a game changer, because if we understand true history to everything, it takes away power from the cockroaches that think they rule the world. Context is key. History is key. And people are tuning in to hear what Fake G says next. And now it's Halloween. Can our kids go out and go door to door on Halloween? Give me a break. Well, I want to go somewhere, and I kind of want to do the broad picture here. Have you heard of William Henry Welch? He was Fauci back in the day. And he was groomed, he was funded, he was willing. He was born in the late 1800s. He was a Yale man, skull and bones all the way, baby. Of course he was. Why am I even shocked anymore? The Rockefellers really wanted to take control of the medical field, and Welch was their guy. And I hopefully am going to go over some things that maybe have not really been brought to light out there, because there's a big understanding that needs to take place in how they wanted to take over pharma and exactly how the public health arrived, right, and got the power that it got. So in his biography, in Welch's biography, there's a single sentence that really caught my eye. And it was that he went over to Germany after Yale to be trained and then come back here. Well, I said, why in the world did he have to go to Germany? Oh, the backstory. So the Rockefellers had a plan to engineer Johns Hopkins as the hub of the newly organized crime medical community. And I don't say that lightly. I really mean that. In 1913, the Rockefeller Foundation sponsored a conference on the need for public health education in the United States. And the Welch-Rose Report of 1915 laid out the need for adequately trained public health workers, and then envisioned an Institute of Hygiene for the United States. So this report reflected that these different preferences of the plan's two architects, you had Welch on one side, he favored scientific research, and then you had Wycliffe Rose, who wanted the emphasis on public health practices. So Welch was about to become their first director when they designated Johns Hopkins as the new hub of what was going to become public health. And when Welch went off to Germany, he was getting well trained in the new study of chemicals, pathogens from the scientists, right, who were working on these at the time. And so up until the 1900s, we had the town doctor, didn't we? The town doctor, you had a problem, you went to the town doctor, you got some help. The doctor had all kinds of remedies, natural and otherwise, time-tested remedies. Some, they needed some work. Some were great. They were respected amongst the town people. We had midwives, we had doctors, we had all kinds of people helping, right? Well, the Rockefellers wanted to change all that, and they wanted to make sure that they could absolutely take the power away from the doctors. Well, how did they do it? They designed a new role for them. The use of chemicals, or pharma, was just taking root, and this was a really great time to take control of the doctor's training. And what they really wanted to do was pigeonhole the doctors into only one aspect of medicine: diagnosing symptoms and giving a prescription. That was it. That's what they wanted the doctors to do. Johns Hopkins as the hub and Welch as their new director would have to invent or insert a need for public health, a new entity. This was going to be intertwined in government by controlling many of the things that doctors did and really taking away what really made doctors special. And that was that they were treating health. Okay. So in America, in a free country, there's no need for public health, right? You wouldn't need government controlled health. You have doctors. People have the freedom to go to whatever doctor they want. You get sick, you go. Problem solved. You don't need a government controlled agency. But and you don't need the government controlled agency to tell you to wash your hands 50,000 times a day. Getting really tired of that. You just need a good mom. A good mom can cover that base. But they wanted to take over most of the duties of the doctor, and they needed an opportunity to showcase how important it was to have public health on the scene. It was kind of like that mantra of, see, you really, really need me. You can't live without me. See how important I am? They had to invent a way to make sure that you realized that what they were about to propose was going to be different and better for America. Public health was going to take over prevention and all of the other things that doctors didn't do. And they were about to control the healthcare industry like we had never seen before. And so Welch, now the director of Johns Hopkins, the Rockefeller creation, saw that people had hookworm in the southern states. Okay, this was rarely fatal, and it affected people in the southern states. They would walk around barefoot. But this wasn't really something that was, killing people off. It wasn't like the biggest problem that we had on our hands. And they decided to pinpoint this as the catalyst, as the driving point to make themselves to give themselves a role, I should say, and make themselves important in our lives so that we couldn't live without them, right? When I come back, I want to tell you a little bit about what they did with hookworm, because it was a little bit what they're doing today. You've got COVID flu, COVID pneumonia, COVID cold. Very rarely is it going to be fatal. Every single state in the union is under 0.0 and then whatever number. I mean, it's not even like it gets a full digit. So they use the same playbook. And when we come back, I want to tell you how they did it. And then I want to tell you where this is leading and why when we come back. And I want to talk a little bit about pharma and about the use of chemicals. So stay tuned. I'm Kate Daly, your guest host, The Kate Daly Show, katedalyradio.com. Back with you, Kate Daly from The Kate Daly Show, katedalyradio.com. I'm glad you're joining me for this, because sometimes we need to kind of go over the big picture just a little bit to understand why we're here. Why are we asking Fauci if our kids can trick or treat if it's safe enough? Can you even imagine? Can you imagine the power that they've amassed? Sickening. And the more we see it, and the more people that see it, and the more eyeballs that wake up to what's going on, maybe they'll see it in a completely different way that they can't unsee. That usually happens with truth. So they were using hookworm, public health, to carve out a niche for themselves. Not even a niche, really just to take over. They really wanted to take over healthcare. So they told the people, well, if you just use these Epsom salts and drink this stuff, you'll be great. Well, people did. They got better. It was something that the doctors could have done. But instead of the doctors doing it, public health decided to kind of put their stamp on, look at us. And so they took credit for, the eradication of hookworm, right? And so what happened was, they divided up this healthcare, and they basically wanted to tell the doctors, you're only going to be involved with what is the matter with me when a patient says that, and what can be done to relieve me. And that's it. That's all you're going to do. And public health gets to do the prevention, the mode of spread, the methods of preventing, the identification, the analysis, everything. They were taking more power than the doctors even realized. So Welch designed Johns Hopkins around sort of what he learned in Germany. And I bet you did not see that coming. Anyway, Welch's prominent students included Walter Reed, of course, Walter Reed Medical Center. And he was also the president of the new American Medical Association. The AMA became the gatekeeper for deciding what training our doctors would get. Welch was also the founding editor of Journal of Experimental Medicine. Yeah. Did you catch that? Experimental medicine. What are we doing now? Experimental medicine. The scientists that he studied with over in Germany were discovering things like anthrax. Boy, you just discover it. That's interesting. Anyway, it all started in the 1800s with the discovery of synthetic dyes. Interesting. Dyeing dyes. Anyway, dyes for clothing, that sort of thing. And this became the start. Actually, it was the color mauve. This became the start of chemical medicine. And the Hoycht company started out in 1863 on the Main River near Frankfurt. At the time, its entire capital consisted of 3 horsepower steam engines, a small boiler in which they burnt arsenic acid and aniline oil, and they produced a synthetic fuchsia dye. That's where it all started. That's why we have Pharma today. And before that, we used natural dyes, colors from plants and so forth. And so then we started changing it up. Well, IG Farben, Hoycht, Bayer, all of those companies merged together to design pharmaceuticals and dangerous concoctions. And that's kind of where it started. Welch went over to train with them in the latter part of the 1800s when they were doing some of their best work. Ouch. Welch, now the director of Johns Hopkins, would be instrumental in cementing the Rockefeller government-controlled healthcare right along with the introduction into pharma. And so holistic medicines, natural remedies, they would start to get demonized in lieu of bringing pharma that would deliver, these remedies that gave side effects and other illnesses. We would become the perpetual patient. Pharma was salivating at this. And so the Flexner Report of 1910 came out. It did the damage to holistic medicine and natural remedies, and even marijuana, CBD. Abraham Flexner was told by John D. Rockefeller to run around the country and evaluate the effectiveness of all the therapies taught in medical schools and other institutions of the healing arts. And Rockefeller wanted to dominate over petroleum, petrochemicals, and pharmaceuticals, which were derived from coal tars or crude oil. And he arranged for his company, Standard Oil of New Jersey. Did the name Bush come to mind? Senor Prescott Bush. Anyway, Standard Oil, to obtain a controlling interest in this huge German drug cartel called IG Farben. And the total number of medical schools in the United States went from 160 on down to 69 schools. Why did it cut into about a third? Well, it was all about controlling the training of the doctors. The new foundation of orthodox medicine is based on Louis Pasteur's germ theory. It's completely flawed. And what it means is a disease condition is viewed by the orthodoxy as this isolated event, like an infection or a virus. And the new training of treatment would be chemical solution or surgery to cut it out. Alternative medicine had explored all these stressors and why it happened and treat the cause, right? It's all about health. So Welch was brought in. And I find this just so fascinating. Welch was brought in to help solve the problem of the 1918 Spanish flu. Remember when I mentioned that? The 1918 Spanish flu, where we conflated all the numbers over and over again in history. And now it's like triple, quadruple the amount of deaths because we said they didn't know how to count back in 1918. Well, it was neither Spanish nor a flu, really. It was the result of using troops as guinea pigs in the new vaccine experimental program that they had, which, by the way, Welch served in the Army. And then also, he was the one guy that they brought in to help with what they were going to do regarding this issue. So the Spanish flu attacked healthy people in their prime. Bacterial pneumonia attacks people in their prime. And flu attacks the young, the old, and those that are having problems with their immune system, right? So was it actually bacterial pneumonia? Was that the real killer? Given the fact that they did autopsies, they said possibly that was the case. just like it is now. Interesting. And much of the role that Welch played in that military program, to vaccinate in Kansas. Interesting that it started at a military base. So before nuclear weapons, all the chemical companies were the leading role. They're the ones that came out with mustard gas and Zyklon B and all of these different things that they used in World War II. Hitler. That's why Hitler even came to power, was because of IG Farben. And in 1925, it was decided that the chemical industry, that we would have several cartels. And IG Farben became IG Farben. And Hitler would not have become Hitler without him. They financed him. And they made sure that he had all of the chemicals he needed. It's sick. It just makes me sick. To think that we really didn't know what was going on behind the scenes. And these chemicals would be sadly used in the gas chambers. And so this is where the American IG Farben sector of IG Farben also takes root too. This is where it got going here. We were under their umbrella. They had the patents. And so they did this through a Swiss company called IG Chemie to try to hide the fact that we were part of this German group who eventually faced conviction for war crimes against humanity. And then they served little time. I'll be right back. Kate Daly Show, katedalyradio.com. I'm live right after this, and you can catch my show at katedalyradio.com and listen live if you'd like. I'll be right back. Hi, Kate Daly here from the Kate Daly Show, your guest host for this hour. And let me tell you, when you kind of get the 30,000 feet up in the air sort of view on this, it's really quite scary how this became the cartel of the century. I don't know if we really realized it. Where they took oil where they wanted it to go. These particular families whose names come up, all the time, over and over again. It's interesting that Pharma became what it became, I think really without a lot of people realizing it at the time and for decades, which is really, really scary. IG Farben, who supplied the chemicals to the gas chambers, and convicted of war crimes in which I think at the very, very most, they only served like 4 years. And then we got him out on Operation Paperclip. Interesting to come over here. But IG Farben became a shareholder in the New Jersey Standard Oil Company, second only to John D. Rockefeller himself. And really, when it comes down to it, Dulles was involved. Of course, Dulles was involved. I swear it's the same cast of characters over and over again. Dulles was personally threatening to cut off Britain's supply of oil during the war if the British persisted with their expose of the American oil connection to IG Farben. It was all intertwined. And so what happened was nobody ever really asked the question of why didn't the IG Farben building that was used, that everybody used in Germany during World War II, including us, why was it never bombed? How did everybody escape that? Why did we make IG Farben command central for our military? And so here's another question. Why all the experimentation? Why did they do the experimentation that they did on people that they were forcing to do it on, right? During World War II. And why did Hitler do that? What was the goal? What was the goal? And so that industry had just begun, right? Pharma experimentations led to a huge explosion in pharma post World War II. But they never explained why. See, we never say, well, what caused that? It was caused through the experimentation. That's how sick and demented these people are. They wanted human guinea pigs. And it makes me think about right now, what's going on right now, demonizing the unvaxxed, right? And then we have the new dawning of transhumanism coming, DNA splicing and dicing, CRISPR. So would our fellow Americans allow this to happen to the unvaxxed? Because look at how they're demonized. We're really one step away. And a certain class of society gets demonized and experimented on with this brand new CRISPR. Is that where we're headed? And everyone turns a blind eye? It's really scary. And so at a time when our history, when we had great sanitation, We finally arrived, right? We had great sanitation. We had running water. We had all of these things because sanitation was the super spreader. Sanitation, vaccines get the credit because of the media and the government, but really and truly it was sanitation, bad sanitation. And so you go all the way back to Moses, you're going to find that he even had rules about being in camp and cleanliness and things like that. And then after the fall of the Roman Empire, you notice that it completely kind of fell off for a while, didn't it? All throughout the medieval times. And they didn't really keep up on it. I'll say that nicely because people just didn't shower. There just wasn't that same understanding. OK, and so what happened? Well, sanitation became wonderful. So why is it that all of a sudden, think about this, we had to have Big Pharma come in with all their chemicals, erase holistic medicine, erase natural medicines, and then all of a sudden, we're sitting on more sick people, right? We have more sick people around the world than we've ever had before. Makes zero sense. We finally get the good sanitation. We finally get to a point where, yes, we should be actually without a lot of disease and illness at this point, especially spreading it. But we're not. Now we have more cancer. We have more disease. We have more illness than ever. It doesn't make any sense. And so after World War II, they said that there was this huge explosion of illness, right, and disease. Were they toying with antibiotics at this point? Yeah. Could you make the argument that some antibiotics might help? Well, what are they doing? What are they doing in side effects to the rest of our body? Do we ever even ask that? They're using these synthetic chemicals, right? And so we never ask, well, what caused polio to spike? What caused it to spike? Well, they were using DDT on the crops. They were spraying poisons, and then also they were toying with antibiotics. I would say two good reasons right there to chalk it up to, hey, we see all of a sudden spike in polio where there shouldn't be one. And so then only about 0.5% of people died from actual polio. I covered this a couple weeks ago, right? Only 0.5% were actually paralyzed. That's a whole 1%. What about everybody else, 99%? Well, it's a little like what we're dealing with today. Most everybody gets a cold and they don't freak out. They're not going to die. Only a certain small sliver in every single state. You're going to have people that are more sick than that. Then they go in for the Fauci special, the protocol from hell, and killing them. Yeah, it's exactly what they're doing, giving them experimental drugs. They're really good at it. They've had really a century and 20 some odd years to work on it, haven't they? So now we are looking at this kind of situation and saying, well, wait a second, with polio, did we really need a vaccination? It was already on its way out. There had been a decade of it. So why were we doing that? Why were we jumping to this vaccination? Well, it involved a lot of government money. Government money started coming in and supporting these vaccination programs. So they give us the fear, right? The big boogeyman. Oh my gosh, everyone's going to die. Every child out there is going to be paralyzed. Parents run the kids in for the shots. The only problem is that half of the shots that were given out at the time were infected with the SV40, the monkey kidney cell diseased shots that they didn't want to admit to, but they knew full well that they were diseased. So it's interesting that they use the almost exact same percentage on this to sell what was coming next. Smallpox as well. With good sanitation, you weren't going to see a lot of smallpox. The 1918 flu, result of vaccinations at, of course, military bases, where they knew they could use all of these guys as guinea pigs because they had complete control over them. Are we seeing a pattern? Then you get to polio, and all of a sudden there's something new to work on, folks. So they start working on it, and just as it's starting to wane, and by the way, the polio vaccine was causing so many cases of polio, an incredible amount of cases of polio, still is to this day. I just asked Bill Gates. So then we start kind of having this quest of vaccination programs, shot programs for kids, right? You go in and you get a series of shots. The well visits. A well visit? What in the hell is that? You go to the doctor when you're ill, not when you're well, and you go in for all of these shots. I look at vaccines much differently, understanding the history of all of this than I ever did before. And what did we do? We do this whole, vaccinations are the only thing that has saved us. Why do we say that? Well, because they own the media and the government. That's why. Pharma gets fed. Pharma gets fed a lot of illness. Were all the vaccinations part of let's get the immune system down? Because I'll tell you, the big mantra of the Rockefellers was, you don't have an immune system. Pharma's here to save you. Ooh, don't you feel all warm and cozy? Pharma's here. Wow. So, yeah, it gets worse, too. I'll come back. I'll explain. But, half the country got infected kidney cells in that polio vaccine. And then what came around the next corner? More cancer than ever. And Nixon declared that war on cancer. And that's why I wanted to revisit that I did a couple of weeks ago, because it plays into this. Now we get to see it from a whole different vantage point of the plans. Hi there. Welcome back. Kate Daly Show. I'm going to do the white man Overbite. I love this music. Anyway, coming back to this, I just kind of wanted to round up the edges a little bit on this and what we're dealing with today, because this is huge. And once you start to see what's actually happening, then you get a good idea of the whole picture. And that's really what is dividing Americans. This is why you have two totally different sets of fears. One group over here, these leftists, think everyone in the world's about to kill them. The climate's going to kill them. And we have conservatives over here and people over here that understand the big picture, know who's at the helm. And they're saying you are a walking bioweapon. So two totally different schools of thought, right? Well, we are not meant to ever cure anyone or help anyone or make sure that they stay healthy. That's why it's the Center for Disease Control, not the Center for Curing Disease. That's a big statement. It says a lot that we have been guinea pigs for over 100 years in their game, in their cartel. And you find it rather disturbing that about 80% of our country is on at least one pharmaceutical, and that the government turned their attention to mental health and a whole plethora of drugs, drugging everybody up. We're drugging kids from the time they're little, right? Everything has a drug. Just here you go. Here's a fix-it. And doctors doing what doctors do and just handing over a script instead of saying what causes that. Why are we here? What is the main mechanism that's causing whatever the problem is? We didn't have childhood cancer in the 1800s like we have right now. We didn't have melanoma cancer go through the roof until they encouraged everybody to wear sunscreen from the AMA in the 70s. If you go look at the chart, and I actually say, go do your own homework on this. I've looked at these charts. The numbers skyrocketed the minute they said, go wear sunscreen. Think about this. People were out in their fields all the time, right? For centuries. They weren't dying of melanoma. Of course they weren't. And so all of a sudden we had skin cancer go through the roof. It was like a 2 or 1 in every 100,000 people. And then it ballooned to almost 50 in every 100,000 people. That's crazy. And then doctors are now trained to embrace pharma. They sell pharma. They get kickbacks from pharma. They get kickbacks for the vaccine industry, too. And so pharma is the biggest cartel the world has ever known. And by the way, the AMA was found guilty in 1987 by a federal judge and fined a couple of $1 million. Also, Pharma has even been sued by our own government and, of course, the source of corruption for many failed experiments that they've done, and also lying through their teeth again and again and again. Fauci's lied so many times, I can't keep up with the lies. I don't know why anyone in their right mind would ever actually listen to this hack. The Rockefeller drug ideology is all about you don't have an immune system. And right now, this is exactly what they've said for the last 20 months. You have no immune system. Everybody's went to kaput. Nobody has it anymore, and you're screwed. So you have to take these experimental medications for the mystery COVID bug that's killing everybody, right? Isn't that what they tell you? Have you ever actually heard the word immune system come out of Fauci's mouth? Or a doctor or anyone that is proposing all of this crazy? Of course you haven't. And Rockefeller had always had this particular interest in China. And Standard Oil was the sole supplier of kerosene and oil for the lamps of China. And then, of course, communism took over. So they kind of went out for a while. But, they're back in. Are you kidding me? Of course they are. And we all know that. Fauci was a big deal for Wuhan and funding it and everything else. So that brings us to Bill Gates, biggest single donor of WHO, the WHO. The AMA vets, who runs the FDA. Almost all the experts on COVID come from Johns Hopkins. All the experts in public health come from Johns Hopkins. Isn't it amazing? And no epidemics to justify it. So they use the tricks of going in and solving a problem that's pretty much solvable by telling you how important they are and how they're saving humanity, because it's always going to get the credit. And then, of course, they name them after foreign countries, the Hong Kong flu, the Asian flu, all of these different flus. Well, the problem is that they're all flu. Just like pneumonia is pneumonia, you're going to treat it as a respiratory. You're going to treat it as a flu. But they name them from foreign places. Why? Because, you might need more shots. You might need more. Do you feel like cattle? Do you feel like that we should be told to start mooing here? I mean, that's the feeling I'm getting with the amount of shots they want us to take coming up here in the future. And so a simple cold, flu, and pneumonia, all given the COVID label. And money comes now from our tax dollars funded to Pharma. Pharma now is in complete control. So is the government of all of our hospitals with their protocols. And they relieve them beyond malpractice with their protocols. So if you follow the protocol and you're a hospital and a doctor, you have no liability, because malpractice only covers you to a certain extent. And then we have the statements of, you anti-vaxxer, that derogatory statement. Oh, you anti-vaxxer. Oh, my gosh. I sure hope we're questioning it at this point, 120 years later. Please. Good heavens. We are the experimentation, and we have been for 120 years. And that's the tough part. That's the tough part to understand. But truth resonates. And once you start seeing this for what it is and the cartel that it is and how they colluded to control medicine and to control what the doctors did and what they didn't, and to carve out not a niche for themselves, but complete and utter control, you start to see it completely different, right? Gosh, I would hope so. We're in a weird place. And by the way, all these notes will be on katedalyradio.com. You can go check out the notes and all the credit given to all the different sources. That'll be up today on katedalyradio.com. Check it out, and you can send that as well. But, the thing with the airlines, I just wanted to mention, Southwest. And Southwest, good on you guys. I love you guys for standing up for freedom. I love it. And boy, everybody should be following this in suit. So I just wanted to say that they're using the government right now by saying we're a government contractor. We're a government contractor. When you are Southwest Airlines and you give flights to federal employees, that does not make you now an employee of the federal government. It means that you did something with the federal government, okay? But it doesn't make you an employee. Who signs the checks? Who signs the checks? Well, Southwest signs their checks, right? They are not a government entity. The checks are not written from the federal government. But the reason that they're saying that is so that nobody figures out that last year in 2020, they actually, when they were doing the bailouts, they sought to control 3 industries. And so before when they did bailouts, they never actually assumed ownership, the government, to a certain extent, but they did in those bailouts. But they want to keep that quiet because it's very Venezuela. It's very socialist, right? To have your government own the airlines, the hospitals, and trucking. So what they're saying is, oh yeah, we have to mask. We're a government entity. We're a government employee. We're included on that EO. It's almost like they want to be. Have you noticed? And so, of course, the Southwest CEO will stand there and say, I'm all for freedom. I don't want to force anything, but I kind of want to pretend I'm a federal employee so that I can mask my employees by force. And not very American thing to do, is it? It's very, very socialist, very communist. And so the EO itself does not actually say government contractors in it. And now we don't even have any written anything that says that any company over 100 has to get vaccinated. It was a press release. We all know that. And so it's all smoke and mirrors. It's all smoke and mirrors. And they do want to hide the fact that the government did take a part ownership in their business as well and gives them a lot of funding. So you always have to follow the money. But I always find it kind of interesting when they're out in the press and they're giving you a little bit of the runaround, right? So that you don't see what's actually going on behind the scenes, and also claiming something that they actually are not. It's pathetic. Stand up and be an American. You are an American soil. You are an American. Start acting like it. Southwest Airlines and American and United. You know, I believe in this country, and I know you do too. We love this country. And we're not going to let it get overrun by these cockroaches. We're just not. So thanks for tuning in. Go to katedalyradio.com. You can get the show notes, and you can get these notes as well. And I'll be going live in a few minutes there. You can actually click listen live, and you can listen live right from the site. And loved Alex's show today. I thought it was amazing. And of course, so many great guests. I'll be interviewing Zelenko today. So Dr. Zelenko, what a hero. Thanks, you guys.
God gave us, through Mother Nature, incredible compounds that we need to live. But God also, through particularly plants, through the botanicals, gave us things that make our lives not just possible, but even better. That's where the term pharmacy comes from, is pharmakia, or basically the knowledge and use of plants. In the old days, they called them witch doctors. Well, it's not witch doctoring now. It's not a guessing game and seeing what works just from observation. It's scientific evidence. And when it comes down to X2, I can talk about all the great products we've got all day, but this is deep earth crystal iodine. Most iodine is bound to other compounds, so you don't get full absorption into the cells. This is pure atomic iodine. Pure. That's why it turns blue on a piece of paper when you add water to it. It has a chemical conversion. And then, of course, we've got down and out 8 different natural organic compounds that give you deep, restful sleep. It's got a big dose of melatonin, a big dose of valerian root, and it just goes on from there. It's extremely strong. People say, well, is it in competition with Knockout? No, Knockout's great. It's got some of the same things, some different things. It's not as strong. This is conservatively dose for dose, and it's a liquid, not a powder pill, twice as strong. And then, of course, we've got DNA Force Plus with the PQQ, the CoQ10, the ELEV ATP, organic Reishi astragalus root extract, and so much more. This is known to regrow nerves, and it's also known to make your telomeres last longer and clean out the mitochondria at the cellular level inside the engines of the cells. So all 3 of these products are in stock right now. 40% off DNA Force, 50% off Down and Out, and because we got a good shipment of that. And for 1 week only, because it's close to selling out again, Survival Shield X2. That's the new big sale. It's only running until the middle of October, so you got about a week to take advantage of it.
Regardless if you're getting X2 or X3, you need iodine. Get it in you.
Yes.
It has literally changed my life. I could not thank Alex anymore for providing this product. It has opened my brain in a way that I never thought anything could ever do. And it is since I started taking it, it's like ... I can't ignore the things that I see. that it's fire. It's fire. So thank you, Ms. Lee. Thank you, InfoWars, and all the staff for everything you do.
Thank you, JD, and thank you, listeners and JD, for supporting InfoWars and going to the InfoWars store. And actually, you are benefiting, like JD said, that he is benefiting from this. Stock up on what you need right now. We don't know other ways that they're going to try and attack us with things. So we might be trying to protect ourselves and staying away from the vaccine shedders, but we are going to want to build up our own immunity, and we can do that with all of these great products on InfoWars. Get them before they're gone.